We're going to continue today in our discussion of idolatry and looking at what kind of idols we really have in our lives, and is food an idol, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and then how to kind of deal with that in our life. So yesterday we jumped into this topic for the first time of really looking at food possibly being an idol in our life, and we looked at the characteristics of idolatry in a lot of scripture, and kind of really why God wants us to not have idols in our lives, and the problem with having idols in our lives, and also what He'll do if we just decide we're going to have them anyway. So if you haven't gotten to go back and watch or listen, if you're watching this on YouTube or catching this on the podcast later, make sure that you go back and check out day 11. It's where we introduce this topic of idolatry and possibly having food fill that place. Let's jump into this really quick lesson that it's really quick to go through, but it's going to take you a little bit of time to do some of the work that she has in here. And we're going to start, diving into this. But before we do, God, I just ask that you would be in our midst in this time. God, I just consecrate this time to you, and I lay down all the things that are vying for our attention. I just lay down all the things vying for my attention. And God, I ask that you would just help your daughters to hear what you're saying through this, and show them what it is that you want them to see, that they would have eyes to see and ears to hear. Open the eyes of their understanding in this concept as you're trying to teach it in regards to idolatry this week. And I thank you for each and every one of the women that are here right now, listening, watching live or on the replays later on in life. And I thank you for their lives. Lord, I speak blessing and favor over them in the name of Jesus. Okay, so if you're following along in the book, and if you don't have the book, don't worry, you can grab it on Amazon. Or you can follow along. The book is called Freedom from Emotional Eating by Barb Raveling, if you're just now catching us for the first time. So let's go ahead and look at page 59. I'm going to start going through and do some question and answer to kind of decide what it is that may be an idol in our life. What are the idols? Maybe there's several idols in our life that we're not aware of, right? So we're going to start diving into that today. Someone once said that the first step in overcoming a problem is to know that you actually have one. And that's absolutely key, because if you don't know, how can you fix it? And if you're not willing to admit that you have a problem, you can't do something about it. And so you kind of got to set your pride aside and say, yes, I need help in an area of my life. I have an issue. What can I do? There's nothing wrong with that, right? So, but likewise, the first step in overcoming idolatry is to actually recognize your idols, right? You have to know what those are in your life in order to get them out, to kick them out, to pluck them out, and to be done with those. And that can be really difficult to do, because often our idols are so subtle that we don't even really notice them. Ouch. That was totally my life for a long time. So how do we notice them? How do we know what our idols are? How can we discover that? And if you're already working ahead in the Bible study, you know where we're going with this. But if not, let's go ahead and answer some questions that she asks in the study to help us uncover those idols for ourselves. So let's go ahead and do that. You can answer those in your actual Bible study book, or you can do this on another sheet of paper. So number one, we're going to identify what our possible idols could be, okay? So number one, what do you feel like you have to have in your life to be happy? So you can jot those things down. You can go back, just write that down if you don't have the book. What do you feel like you need to have in your life to be happy? So for me, these are just my honest and raw answers from the very beginning when I did this Bible study over a year ago. My number one answer was coffee, which is hilarious because I had no idea. And I've recently went through this thing where I gave up all caffeine for 6 weeks. And that was a tough thing for me to make a decision to do. It wasn't tough for me to actually do, because there was grace on it. God was so sweet to me to show up and help me walk through that and help me lay that down in my life. But He had already been talking to me about it way before I actually did it. So it was a hard decision, because it was one that I wasn't willing to admit was actually a problem, like we started out talking about today. So another thing for me, I needed to feel like I needed to have in my life to be happy was food. So the first two things on my list was coffee and food. Whoa, so revealing, right? So revealing. And I'm just being completely honest right now. So, what are yours? Like, start typing those out in the chat. Let us know just the first thing that came to mind when you're like, oh, I got to have that to be happy. If I don't have that, I'm not happy. Like, some people say, well, I got to have my Dr. Pepper. You don't want to see me without my, Dr. Pepper or my coffee. And, people wear shirts and they carry around bags and they say, have memes, talking about how important something is in their life and they have to have it, right? All right. So the number 3 thing for me, I kind of had a big list. You can have several things. I just had a big list, was sleep. Yeah, I got to have that to be happy. And fun. I need to have fun to be happy. Y'all, I really do enjoy laughing and being silly, and just life gets a little too serious sometimes. So I really believe that having good friends too is something that I have to have in my life to be happy. So those are just a few things I wrote. I would love for you to go ahead and type out in the chat what your number 1, 2, or 3 thing would be. If you want to just put one, great. If you want to put more than one, go for it. Be brave, but make sure you're writing this down where you're going to be able to go back and see it later for yourself. Okay. So number 2, what do you do when you're depressed or hurt or angry or lonely or stressed out? All those things. What do you do? Well, here's what I did. I don't do this anymore, but this was what I did. I ate junk food. I ate junk food. I wrote eat junk food because that's what I did at that time. I ate junk food. That was the number 1 thing when I was depressed, hurt, angry, lonely, stressed out. Junk food, 100%, usually chips or something salty and fried, right? That was my thing. Some people it's sugar, but that wasn't mine. I would just definitely eat junk food. I would avoid whatever it was I was feeling like the plague. I would not give in to dealing with what I was feeling no matter what, because I thought it would overwhelm me. Like I kind of talked about that in a few of these different episodes that we've done here talking about this. I was not willing to actually look at what the problem was and what the emotion was that was, the issue. I wasn't willing to look at the emotion because I felt as though I couldn't do anything about the problem. So what does it matter to deal with the emotion when it can't be fixed, was kind of what I thought at the time. And I avoided, right? I overworked. So I worked my butt off doing all kinds of things that didn't matter at all. Things like it didn't really matter whether it was actual work or like that would produce income work. I'm talking about like scrubbing toilets type of stuff, just overwork myself like to the bone, just doing anything. And I went back through this, oddly enough. I can kind of see my own notes in here, and y'all can't because it's a big hot mess in there. So if you're watching this on video, you can see it's a big hot mess. But I did go back when I went through this study again, and it was interesting to see my new answers. So it was very interesting that number 2, the new answer, as I processed out and went through this for the second time, was I would listen to music and talk to God. Those were the things that I did when I was depressed, hurt, angry, lonely, or stressed. Okay. All right. Number 3, what do you do to avoid doing the things that you don't want to do? Oh, snap. I know I do all the things, right, to avoid doing what I know I should be doing, or I just don't really want to do it. And I did this when I was writing my book, like hardcore did this really bad. I would have a set time where I was going to sit down and write my book, and I would end up just sitting on the couch staring at a blank screen for 30 minutes and go, or I might get a sentence out, but then I would go, hey, like I'm done with this. I'm going to get up and I'm going to clean. I could see the laundry. I could see the floor need to be swept. I could see the dishes need to be done, whatever it was. I would find something else to do. So I would avoid doing what I knew I needed to do, but I didn't want to do because it was hard. It was hard. And I didn't quite know how. I mean, I definitely didn't know how to write a book. I am a writer, but I definitely didn't know how to write a book, yet alone write my story and make it make sense in a way that wasn't just sounding like I was crying on the paper, because I wasn't. Like the whole point of the book that I wrote, Behind Enemy Lies, was to share not just what I went through, like boohoo, poor me, but it was to share where God brought me from to where he brought me to. And if he hadn't done these things in my life, I would definitely be a train wreck somewhere, like for sure, no doubt. So it was to encourage, but it was hard for me to figure out the balance in all of that as I was doing it. So a lot of times I would avoid writing because, man, it was just like, oh, this is tough and I don't know how to do it. So I would just do what I wrote here, work on tasks that I know that I could do well because I didn't want to fail. So I felt like if I started doing it and I got to the point where I was just hitting a wall and I didn't know how to do it, right? I could quit doing it and go do something I did know how to do well. And that would be maybe exercising, or maybe cleaning the house, for instance, taking care of chores and errands. I'm really good. I'm a good little homemaker, right? Like I'm a good housewife. I definitely know how to do all the things, even with jobs. I know how to do all the things, right? So I would go and do the things that I knew that I could do well, to avoid the things that I didn't want to actually do. I would do housework. I would scroll social media. I would research things that didn't even matter, that I could care less about really, but I thought, I'm making myself think these are important. I'll research all these things. Okay. Yes. So I would do things like clean my room, organize the junk drawer. I mean, what do y'all do? Just let me know. What do you do? Tell me in the chat. I would love to know. And number 4, what do you always make sure that you have time for each day? This one's a big one, okay? So what do you always make sure, no matter what, that each day you have time to do these things? So write that down. What do you always make sure that you have time for each day? Well, for me, work. I made sure that I had time for work. Like I have to work, right? I made sure that I had time for my busy tasks. So those could go hand in hand, really. But work, busy tasks, I made sure that I had time for coffee, 100%, food, checking social media 1,000 times a day, checking my emails, right? Like there are things that you know that you're going to do in your life. You're going to make time to do those no matter what. So type some of those out in the chat. Let me know what is just one thing, okay, that you make time to do every single day, whether it's checking your phone, going for a walk, whatever that might be, good, bad, or indifferent. Just go ahead and let me know one thing, and then make sure you're writing a list down in your quiet time as you're going back through this, of all the things that you just know God's just revealing. And if you can't think of another thing, sit for another minute or two quietly and just ask him, is there anything else, God? Is there anything else? Because the Holy Spirit's going to reveal to you what is tried to be hidden, right? So you can't heal what you won't reveal. So you need to allow him to reveal it to you in order to heal it, to move forward. Okay. It's very, very important. All right. So let's move on to number 5. What could you not live without? And this one kind of goes back to number 1 for me, but what could you not live without? Well, money. I have to have money, right? But that was the number 1 thing I wrote on my list first. I thought, money, like I have to have that. So what could you not live without? Go ahead and type out in the chat as you're thinking about it. The comforts of life, like my bed. I don't think I could live without my bed. Do y'all? Do you love your bed? Do you love like sleeping on your bed? Do you think you could live without it? Air conditioner. Like I really, at that time, I couldn't live without an air conditioner. I still probably don't feel like I could, but I know I could. And I even went through and asked my family later on in life, like later on I'm sorry, I said later on in life, but it was later on in life when I was going back through this Bible study again. I went and asked my family, and some of the things they said was pretty hilarious. My daughter said she can't live without socks and hairbrush. And so, it's pretty interesting to hear what people say. So what could you not live without? Make your list. Number 6, in what areas of your life do you experience the greatest struggles? Well, for me, it was at this time for sure, weight loss. Oh, man, like biggest struggle of my life was weight loss. Being consistent to make the best choices long enough to actually see some results in my life. Another thing I put was prioritizing exercise. I couldn't read my own handwriting, so that's what I was trying to do. And then also what I struggled with was waking up early to be with God. And the last thing I wrote was fear. I really struggled with a lot of fear. I had to break that spirit off me and kick it up out of my life. And I'm not talking about the emotion of fear, like don't jump off of the side of the bridge, that will keep you safe type of fear. I'm talking about irrational fears that cause anxiety and that, has spirits attached to them, the spirit of fear attached to it. And so I had to work on that. And there were some things, right? So in what areas of your life do you experience your greatest struggles? When I asked my husband this at the time, he said establishing healthy habits. And my daughter answered this so candidly, and I was so thankful for her. But this is something that even as a certified mental health coach, as a counselor, as somebody who knows that these things are what we should be doing, doesn't necessarily mean that like my family is going to listen to me, right? especially my 16-year-old daughter. She's like, what do you know? Her biggest thing, her greatest struggle at that time was shoving her emotions. She wasn't 16. It was, a while back. She is now, but shoving her emotions, not really wanting to deal with those. Even though I talk a lot about that, she's still like, I'm just going to let that go. She's going to figure that out on her own in her own time. Right. And she is now, thankfully. Let me know, what do you experience? What areas in your life do you experience the greatest struggle? Number 7, what would you have a hard time giving up for just 1 month? Okay. So that's why I gave up coffee. This is why. Okay. But not originally, but God showed me, if you can't give it up, if it is something that you have to have, Catherine, if you say every morning, no matter what, you have to have this coffee, but you're not getting up to spend time with me, but you'll get up to spend time with your coffee. At one point in my life, coffee was the only thing that got me out of bed. I was so depressed. I mean, I was just full of grief and overwhelm and burnout and sorrow and all the things. It was overwhelming. Coffee was the only thing that would motivate me enough to get out of bed. And so when God said, hey, we need to put this down, you need to put this down for a little while. You need to put this down. You need to get this the control that it has off of your life. So that would be the first thing that I would have said back then. What would you have a hard time giving up for 1 month? Coffee. Well, I gave it up for a month. I gave it up for 6 weeks. But back then, I wouldn't have thought that was even possible. No way, Jose. What about food? Could you give up food for a month? I mean, we wouldn't want to give up food. We actually could survive. Jesus did for 40 days, right? It's not necessarily something I would recommend. But food was definitely number 1 on my list. I couldn't give up working for 30 days. Even if I had all the money that I needed in the bank to pay the bills, I still felt and still struggle with this, actually feeling the need to show up and work, get things done, be productive. I don't think I could live without my cell phone, right? So I would have a hard time giving up my cell phone for an entire month. My computer, my media, just what is it for you? Like my daughter was like riding horses. She couldn't give up riding horses for a month. No way. So what is it for you? Type that in the chat and let me know. Just one thing, if you're so brave. Okay. Now this is a no judgment zone. We're not being mean to each other here. We're not looking at each other like, oh, really? Like, yeah, I could totally give that up. What's wrong with you? No. This is a safe place. You should be able to share. So go for it. Okay. All right. So where do your feelings of self-worth come from? This is number 8. Where do your feelings of self-worth come from? Well, for me, productiveness, right? Like producing, being productive, contributing to the family's income. Self-worth comes from my ability to actually perform well and do things in excellence. And sometimes perfectionism is like excellence is dressed up like, perfectionism is dressed up like excellence is what I was trying to say. And so actually that's a big problem still for me that I battle. And I know that God is working on me, right? Like we are all on a journey at some point. It's gotten better, but it's not something that, I've been delivered from for sure. All right. So number 9, what do you do to escape when you're having a hard time in life? For me at this time, even back then, I thought it would be food, right? You would think it would be food probably because we're doing a emotional eating Bible study, but it's not. It wasn't. It was work. So that's what I did. I would work to escape what I was having a hard time with in life. And whatever it is for you, it's okay. Like if it's food, great. Write that down. That's just whatever else it is too. Maybe you go to glasses of wine every single night. Maybe you go to whatever restaurants around, or whatever it is. Okay. So just type that out. Let me know, or make sure you write this down for yourself. And number 10, when do you most feel like eating? Well, when do you most feel like eating outside of when you're actually hungry? She doesn't say that part, but let's just go on and be honest. When do you most feel like eating? When I'm tired. Oh, when I'm so tired. I just want to eat all the things because my body is exhausted and it's looking for fuel. Okay. When I feel like eating the most, when I just want to numb out, when I want to shut the world out. That was when I was struggling the most with eating, and when I wanted to escape from all the things, the hard things in life, right? So for you, when do you feel most like eating? So go through and answer those 10 questions. Be honest about them. Don't beat yourself up. This is not a time to do that. So we're just going to be honest about it because we're going to learn to recognize our idols in life so that we can get rid of them. So the last question may seem a little out of place, but it's there for a reason. Sometimes we turn to food because our other idols aren't meeting our needs. 100%. Food may not have been the original idol, but it definitely can become an idol when we consistently turn to it for deliverance, like we talked about yesterday. So, for example, maybe my idols is an exciting, or maybe she says, maybe my idol is an exciting life. I feel like I have to have some excitement in my life to be happy. And if I'm at a boring stage of my life, then I might eat to try to provide the excitement that I crave. Do you see how this works? Pretty interesting. So my original idol is excitement, but food becomes an idol when I turn to it to deliver me from boredom. Wow. Wow, it's interesting. So I just want you to think about this. Can you think of any examples in your own life of this concept where your original idol might have been something else, but it wasn't meeting your need in that moment, so you turned to food? So your answer to that last question on the list, number 10 that we just talked about, when do you feel most like eating? So your answer to that last question is going to point out some problem areas in your life, areas that you could really work on if you wanted to improve your life. So for example, if I eat whenever I'm dreading a task that I have to do, right here, this girl, I may need to work on the problem of procrastination. Yes. So did you find any areas that you could work on to improve your life? And for me at this time, I even wrote the same thing down, was that I made an idol out of work and producing, for sure. And when I wasn't able to do that, or when I even felt overwhelmed with doing that, and I would put too much on my plate, which I do tend to do, then I would get overwhelmed and I would say, forget all this. I'm just going to go eat because this is too hard. So here's a list. She gives us a big list of potential idols that you can circle, any of those that you feel like just at first that you might be inclined to elevate to the level of being an idol. And so the list, I'm just going to read the list out loud to you, and you can kind of silently agree, especially if you're driving and listening to this. But I would definitely recommend you write down the ones that's, if you don't have the book and you can circle it, we're on page 60, by the way, I would write down the idols as I list them out that pop out to you, like, yeah, that's probably an idol. Okay. Even if you're not so sure, go ahead and just write it down. It's going to be important. Let's go through this list. It's a pretty extensive list. So just listen up and then write down which ones come to mind for you, or circle those in your book. So possessions, comfort, power, ministry. Ministry? What, Catherine? How can ministry be an idol? It's such a good thing. Yeah, it is a good thing until you turn it into an idol, until it becomes greater than the one who created us to do ministry. We become human doers instead of human beings. So ministry, when we get caught up in being in ministry so much, it can definitely become an idol. We get our source of identity. I got caught up in this. That's how I know. I got my source of identity in my ministry and in a title, not necessarily like a title, like I thought I needed a title, but I didn't know that I thought that my worth and my value came from the way that I served in ministry at the place that I was in ministry at, and how I did it. And if I didn't do it well, then I felt like something was wrong with me. And I didn't realize this till it was all stripped away from me. So God got me to the point of like just taking all the things. And so I could see, oh, I didn't realize I had my identity wrapped up in that, but I did, because it feels so bad right now, right? Okay, so what about reading? What about alcohol, success, relationships, a busy life? 100% me, a busy life, food, control. These are anything that you might elevate, okay, as potential idols that are taking the place of God, that are something that could possibly. A clean house. That was me. I'm just being honest. Any of these for you, okay? I don't know. Let me know. Creativity, people, TV. What about that? Shopping. Ooh, probably so many of us. An easy life. That was me. All about comfort. I said I needed my bed, right? Remember that. Status. Do you crave status? Do you need status in life? Like whatever that even looks like for you. Exercise. Exercise can become an idol when you are obsessive about it, okay? Church. What? How can church be an idol, Catherine? When we elevate it to the place that it's not actually all about God, it's just about the process, the people, the building, the religion of it all, right? Okay, fun. Your to-do list. Do you elevate your to-do list above God? If you do your to-do list and God's not on your to-do list number one, first than you do. A career. What about that? Lack of conflict in your life, a political regime. We're not talking about all that right now, but maybe that's you. How about the internet? I think we're probably all guilty of that in this day and age, of elevating the internet, to a place of being an idol. What about husband and kids? Physical appearance, your desire for approval, success of your children, maybe accomplishments, excitement, independence. That's a big list of things that she gave. And honestly, if I'm being quite honest, I went through and asked my family to help me out. But if you can actually see this, you can't see all of it, I know, but some of you are listening and you're not watching. But I've circled the majority of them, whether it was from me or my family. We circled the majority of them. I think there was only maybe 7 that we didn't circle. And I was like, wow, that's really tough. So back in the days of the Bible, they had to create their idols out of wood or metal or stone. And in our modern society, with all of its luxuries and comforts, right, we have a huge variety of idols from which we can choose. So if you look at that list, most of the items on it are actually pretty good things. It's okay to want them. The problem comes when we feel like we have to have them, or we begin to rely on them to cope with life. So the more we cling to them, the more their grip on us tightens, and soon they control us. So like Paul said back in Corinthians, I'm gonna go back to this constantly, that he told the Corinthian church, everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything's permissible for me, sure, but I will not be dominated or controlled by anything. Dominated, controlled, used interchangeably. So wow, I just love that that she's saying that. She's just giving us this, reminder that these things in and of themselves, ministry, church, reading, how can that be bad? Creativity, a clean house, we want to have a clean, they're good in and of themselves, right? But the more we cling to them and the more they have a grip on us, the more they will eventually just totally control our lives. So idols are never going to make us happy long term. Only God can do that. Thankfully, he's able and willing to help us break free from our idols. And tomorrow, we're going to talk a lot more about how to break free from those idols. Actually, for the rest of the week, we're going to be talking a lot more about how to break free from those in our life and start the process, because it isn't always a one and done thing. And a lot of times when we're in a development stage of transformation, it's not one and done. But when you're going through the process, you're going to come out on the other side looking like something different. You're not going to come out looking the same as when you went in, and you may even have to go back, through the process looking like you look as the new transformed you again to get to an even more refined transformation. So that's kind of what I've done, and I continue to do. I think I've been a pursuer of self-development since I was 21, maybe 22, something like that. I think there's something to it, right? There's something to wanting to pursue being better and not necessarily perfect. We can't ever be perfect, but we can always grow in areas. And I think that takes a lot of laying down things in our life, attitudes in our life. There's seasons of our life, and God's just always, I feel like, chipping away, refining us and pressing us even to become even greater in this world, to have a greater impact. Not that we'll be greater or elevated to be greater. I just mean that, but we will have a greater impact on the world around us for the kingdom when we are constantly developing, transforming, growing, getting better, looking more like Christ, being healed, laying things down, getting things broken off of us, dealing with our inner healing that we need to deal with, going through deliverance, doing all the things that we need to do in life, because we are worth it. We are important to the kingdom, and the enemy knows that. That's why he wants to keep us bound in whatever junk we're just dragging around with us everywhere we go. And so it's really something I decided a long time ago that I wanted in my life was freedom. Even though I didn't quite know how to articulate that, I didn't know that that's exactly what I wanted, but I knew that I wanted different than what I had seen growing up. And I knew that I had seen other people who had it. Up till that point, I had not seen that, so I didn't know it was available. But once I realized that it was available, there was no turning back for me. It was just a constant pursuing of something greater than what I experienced as a child, and knowing that there was freedom So, ladies, that's it for today. I want to encourage you to go back through that. Make sure you make your list of all those things we just went through 1 through 10. So you can start to recognize, like, what are some of the things that are the common thread themes in how you answered those questions, and then take some time to do some truth journaling about your day, because truth journaling, like I said, is a practice. It's something that if you get good at doing, just write down, here's what I felt today. Here's what I thought today. Here's what so-and-so said today. Here's what happened today. And then go back through that little paragraph that you might write, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sentences, whatever it is. Go back to those, look at the truth. Here's what I'm saying, or here's the lie that I'm believing. God, what do you say about it? And then cancel out the lie with the truth, right? So we're going to truth journaling. If you haven't watched it, is in week 1. I think it's on day 3, maybe, or 4. So you can go back. It's labeled, it's titled Truth Journaling. So you can go back and look at that. And tomorrow we're going to be going through how to start to break idolatry, to break whatever agreements we've made to make things idols in our lives. And we're going to continue doing that through the rest of this week. And if you're loving this Bible study so far, make sure that you just right now take a minute to click the thumbs up on this video, and then let me know. Just spam the chat, spam the comments with emojis, like happy faces, whatever you want to say, like, yeah, girl, I'm loving it. Just put some comments down there, because it really helps when you engage in this content for YouTube to share it with others, and so that they're exposed to it too, because it's very important. I'm going to close this out in prayer. Father, I thank you for your mercy and for your grace as we're going through this process. I just ask, Father, that you would guard your daughters from condemnation that the enemy is going to try and heap on them as they're going through this process. Lord, I just thank you that there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, that you are using this to refine us and to bring us closer to you, and to cause us to look more like Jesus on the outside to those that are that encounter us, that we come into contact with in our world. And I thank you for your love. And I thank you for favor. And I speak life over each and every one of these women today, life over their bodies, healing in their bodies, healing in their minds. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Ladies, thank you for being here today. And I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.